feedback. When you go silent, this thing that happens, especially if he's not used to it, is confusion. He doesn't quite know how to process it. He might tell himself, feedback, she's just moody, or brush it off with a casual, she'll come around. And it's not always because he doesn't care. In fact, feedback. Sometimes it's because he does, but his ego gets in the way before his heart gets a chance to catch up. You see, men are trained often unconsciously to believe they're in control of emotional pace in a relationship. When you stop talking, stop texting, stop explaining yourself, it unsettles that belief. At first, back, it might even look like he's unfazed. He might keep posting, keep joking, keep living like nothing's changed. But inside, a subtle discomfort starts brewing. Feedback, because whether he wants to admit it or not, silence feels different than anger. Anger is loud, it's reactive. It means you're still emotionally involved. Silence is still, it's quiet. Feedback, it's the space where consequences start to grow. What often happens is this: he mistakes your silence for a tactic, a temporary protest. So he doesn't react. He thinks, feedback, she'll talk to me when she cools off. But when that silence lingers, when it stretches past what he expected, it creates a gap he didn't prepare for. Feedback, he starts to notice the lack of your presence, your attention, your energy. It's not just about missing a text. It's about feeling that you're no longer orbiting around him emotionally. Feedback. And this is when ego becomes loud. He might get defensive. If she wants to ignore me, let her. That's the voice of pride trying to protect him from the fear he won't say out loud. Feedback, the fear that you've actually pulled away, not just emotionally, but mentally and spiritually. The fear that you're not waiting for him anymore. He may even double down on his aloofness. Feedback, trying to win a game you're not even playing. He wants to appear unaffected, as if silence from you has no impact. But the truth is, feedback, men often act the most indifferent when they feel the most uncertain. That indifference, it's a shield, because if he shows that he's confused, feedback, that he's starting to feel the absence of you, that would mean admitting he noticed. And if he noticed, it means it mattered. And that's the irony. Silence doesn't scream. It doesn't demand feedback, but it's loud in a way that hits different. It creeps in. It makes a man question things he never thought twice about before. Feedback, not because you tried to make him feel guilty, but because you stopped trying to make him feel anything at all. The second he feels that shift, the illusion of control breaks. When you go silent, feedback, the first thing that happens almost instinctively is that a man gets confused. He doesn't immediately understand what's shifted, but he senses it, feedback. And the very first layer of his reaction is almost always ego. That's not necessarily because he's arrogant or doesn't care. It's because silence, especially from a woman who was once warm, feedback, engaged and emotionally available, unsettles him in a way he hasn't yet put into words. At first, it might look like he's unfazed. He might even act a little colder, a little more distant. Feedback, almost like he's matching your energy. That's the ego talking. It's a defense mechanism. It's his way of pretending, well, if you're pulling away, I can pull away too. But deep down, feedback, he's already started to notice. He's noticing that your usual responses aren't there. The little texts he once received aren't popping up anymore. You're not reaching out, checking in, feedback, or reacting to his breadcrumbs. And while he may act like he's okay with that, what's really happening is that his brain is scrambling to understand what just changed. Feedback. It's that moment when he starts looking around for proof that he's still in control of the situation, and your silence tells him he's not. That control, that grip he thought he had, feedback. It's slipping. He doesn't like that. And so the first reaction isn't usually reflection or empathy. It's self-preservation, feedback. He might try to dismiss you emotionally before he feels the sting of being dismissed himself. But here's the thing, men often confuse attention with affection. When you were giving him your time, feedback, your energy, your emotions, he may have gotten used to it, taken it for granted, even assumed it would always be there. Your silence disrupts that rhythm. It removes the cushion, feedback. And when the ego no longer hears the applause, it starts to feel exposed. That's when something inside him starts to shift. The silence makes him uncomfortable, but he's not sure why yet. He hasn't connected the dots. He hasn't realized that this isn't about punishment or games. It's about your peace, about boundaries, feedback, about not chasing someone who's stopped meeting you halfway. And the irony is, the more you go quiet, the more noise it creates in his head. He starts to think more, feel more, replay moments more. Feedback. He just doesn't let on in these. A man's true emotional instincts start to surface. Some try to mask it with bravado. Some go into denial. Feedback. Some even try to provoke a reaction to see if you still care. But underneath all of that, he feels it. He just doesn't want you to know how much, because silence from someone you once had full access to. That silence is deafening. And trust me, he hears it. Feedback. The thing about silence is that at first it just feels like a pause, a moment, something temporary. He thinks she just needs space. Or feedback, a shell cool off eventually. But when that silence lingers, when it becomes not just the absence of noise, but the absence of you, something deeper begins to unravel. feedback. And it's not logic emotional. It creeps in unexpectedly in ways that don't always make sense. It starts to trigger memory. It starts to trigger longing. You see, feedback. Men don't always recognize what they have while it's in front of them. Not because they don't care, but because comfort can be deceptive. When someone's consistent, warm feedback and emotionally available, it's easy to fall into a rhythm where their presence feels guaranteed. He gets used to your laugh. He gets used to you asking how his day was. Feedback. He gets used to you remembering the little things, his favorite meal, that meeting he was nervous about, the way he likes his coffee. He doesn't always see those things as special. Feedback, because they've become part of his daily life, familiar. But when all of that disappears, when the calls stop, the check-ins vanish, feedback. The emotional labor you quietly carried every day goes missing. He doesn't just feel silence. He feels disoriented. And here's where it gets real feedback. His mind starts to fill that silence with memories. Memories he thought he had tucked away. Memories that felt small in the moment, but now feel massive. Feedback. He remembers the way you looked at him when you believed him, the way your voice softened when he was struggling, the way you stood by him in moments when no one else did. Feedback. And it's in that silence that nostalgia starts to take root. He'll find himself hearing a song you used to sing along to, and suddenly your voice is in the room with him. Feedback. He walks past a place you once went together. The memory replays like it happened yesterday. He sees someone with your hairstyle or your laugh, and for a second, his heart skips. Feedback. Because the mind doesn't delete emotional imprints. It stores them, and your silence unlocks them one by one. What's wild is that the arguments, the tension, feedback, the moments he found frustrating, they start to fade. What remains is the connection, the emotional safety, the joy, the little things that made your presence feel like home. Feedback. He realizes that while he thought he needed space or freedom, what he actually needed was understanding. And now that he's sitting in the aftermath, feedback. The realization doesn't come as a dramatic moment. It sneaks up on him in quiet, ordinary seconds. That's the power of memory. It's selective feedback. It doesn't always show us the whole picture. It shows us the parts that meant something. And in the silence, those parts echo the loudest. Little feedback. He remembers not just what you did, but how you made him feel. And here's the kicker: no new connection can replicate that history. He can try to distract himself, go out, talk to someone new. Feedback. But the piece of him still stuck in the sound of your absence, and no one else quite fits in the shape you left behind. Eventually, the longing turns into questioning. Feedback. He wonders why he didn't appreciate you more. Why he didn't say what he should have when you were still there to hear it. Why he waited for silence to realize the depth of what he had. Feedback. And this isn't about regret for what was said. It's about all the things he never said. All the moments he held back, stayed guarded, or assumed you'd always be there. Feedback. That's when the internal conflict starts. Because now he's not just missing you. He's missing the version of himself that you saw and believed in. Feedback. And he doesn't know how to find that version without you. That's the H that stays. Not just the missing, but the knowing. Knowing he had something real back, and that real doesn't come around twice. And all of it began with your silence. Feedback. There's this moment that happens after the initial go response fades, after the posturing, after pretending not to care. Feedback. When your silence stretches just long enough that the distraction of pride wears off and he's left alone with nothing but his own thoughts. Feedback. That's when things get interesting, because that's when the emotional disruption begins. See, a lot of men aren't used to sitting in emotional discomfort. Feedback. We're often conditioned to move on quickly, bury it, or find something or someone new to mask the emptiness. But your silence doesn't give him that luxury. Your silence creates a space. Feedback. And in that space, he starts to feel everything he's been avoiding. It's in the quiet where your absence starts to take up more room than your presence ever did. Feedback. He might have shrugged off the last conversation, maybe even told himself you were being dramatic or overacting. But now there's nothing left to push against. No more arguments. Feedback. No more text to ignore. No more calls to half-heartedly return. There's just stillness. And in that, his mind starts replaying things he thought he'd gotten away with. Feedback. Or moments he didn't think were that important. Now, they show up in hyphenation. It starts with simple realizations. He remembers the way you looked at him when you were hurt. Feedback. The way your tone changed when you stopped feeling safe to express yourself. The times you reached out and he made you feel like you were too much. And then slowly it turns into regret, because when you were there, present, vulnerable, available, he had the luxury of taking you for granted. But now that you're gone, he doesn't just miss what you gave. Feedback. He misses how it made him feel about himself. That's what a lot of people don't understand. When a man starts feeling the weight of your silence back, it's not just that he misses you. He misses the you version himself. He got to be around you. You made him feel wanted, needed, chosen. And when that energy vanishes, feedback. It forces him to ask a painful question. Who am I now that she's no longer reflecting back the best parts of me? That's where the real reflection begins. Feedback. In the absence of your emotional presence, he's left with only his actions to evaluate. And for the first time, he starts seeing the pattern, how he didn't show up, how he let things slide. Feedback. how he thought there would always be another chance. It's that sinking feeling, like realizing too late that you were living in a moment you'd never get back. Model feedback. This is often when the late night overthinking kicks in. He lies awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what you're doing, who you're with, and if you've truly moved on. Feedback. He checks your social media, not to see if you're okay, but to see if you're okay without him. And every time he sees you glowing, laughing, or simply existing without reaching back out, feedback hits him. Because you weren't just someone in his life, you were the person who saw him even when he didn't deserve it. And now he can't unfeel that loss. Sometimes he'll reach out, model feedback, not with an apology, but with a vague message, hey, or been thinking about you, because he's testing the waters. Feedback. Trying to see if your silence was just a phase or if you've really stepped into your power. Other times he'll stay quiet too, because pride still lingers. Feedback. But the silence doesn't feel like peace to him anymore. It feels like consequence. And what's most powerful is this: during all of this inner chaos, you haven't had to say a single word. Feedback. You haven't begged for understanding, you haven't explained your worth, and you haven't asked for him to see you differently. Feedback. You simply removed your energy, and that did more than any conversation ever could. Feedback. Because silence isn't the absence of communication, it's the loudest statement you can make when someone has stopped listening. Feedback. And now he can't escape the sound of everything he didn't hear when you were still speaking. Feedback. There's a point where the silence stops being something he's just reacting to and instead becomes something that forces a decision. See, in the beginning, your silence stirs confusion. Feedback. Maybe a little ego, maybe a delayed realization. But eventually he reaches a crossroads. This is where it stops being about what you're doing and starts being about who he actually is. Well, feedback. Because now it's not just about missing you, it's about what he's going to do with that feeling. A lot of talk about clarity like it's a light bulb moment, but for men, feedback. Clarity often shows up in the form of discomfort that becomes impossible to ignore. That H that won't go away. The growing awareness that he let something valuable slip. Feedback. But awareness isn't the same as action. This is the point where he either leans in or checks out, where he either chooses growth or chooses comfort, where he steps up or stays small back. And it's important to understand that how a man reacts here is a direct reflection of his emotional maturity. Feedback. This is the moment that reveals whether he was just enjoying the benefits of your love or if he's actually capable of meeting the standard your silence is now demanding. Some men when confronted with the discomfort of your silence, try to minimize it. They tell themselves it's not that deep, that you'll be back eventually. They distract themselves, bury it. Feedback. Try to convince themselves they didn't care as much as they actually did. That reaction is not strength. It's avoidance. Feedback. It's easier to pretend you're fine than to sit with the vulnerability of realizing you weren't ready for what you lost. Feedback. But others, if they're honest with themselves, begin to see your silence not as rejection, but as a reflection, mirror held up to them. And in that mirror, feedback. They see all the parts of themselves they didn't bring to the relationship, the times they stayed quiet when they should have spoken, the ways they chose distance instead of intimacy. Feedback and the comfort they took for granted. And those men have a choice. They can keep sitting with that discomfort and let it grow into guilt, or they can use it as fuel to step forward. Feedback. Maybe it's a conversation they finally initiate, not just to check in, but to own their part. Maybe it's a shift in how they approach relationships going forward. Feedback. Maybe it's the moment they start showing up differently. But whatever it is, that choice only becomes possible because of your silence. Because when you were talking, when you were trying, feedback, explaining, offering chance after chance, he didn't have to, he could coast. But silence removes the safety net. It forces accountability. It demands either evolution or exit. Feedback. And you don't have to say a word to make it happen. What's really happening here is that your silence has become a filter. It separates the man who is just comfortable with the idea of you, feedback, from the man who's actually capable of loving you in the way you deserve. It weeds out the one who was there for validation from the one who's willing to do the inner work. Feedback. It shows you who was invested in you versus who was invested in how you made them feel. And here's the truth. Some men won't rise to meet that moment. And as hard as that is to accept, feedback, it's a blessing because your silence didn't push him away. It simply revealed that he was never going to come closer on his own. That's not a loss. That's a form of protection. Feedback. That's you no longer confusing potential with partnership. But the ones who you-dog step up, the ones who feel the silence, sit with the discomfort, feedback, and choose to respond from a place of humility instead of ego. Those are the men who are worth your energy because they're not just reacting emotionally, they're acting intentionally. Feedback. And that distinction changes everything because it's not just that he misses you, it's what he's willing to do about it. Feedback. There's this idea that silence weakness. That if you're not speaking, not chasing, not explaining, you've somehow given up or lost. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Feedback. Silence isn't weakness. It's power. And not the loud, aggressive kind of power people often recognize. No, it's the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't ask for attention but commands it. Feedback. The kind that speaks not through noise but through presence, or more accurately, through the absence of it. When a woman who used to give everything, her time, her energy, feedback, her softness, goes quiet, it's not because she doesn't feel anymore. It's because she finally started protecting those feelings. She's no longer explaining her worth, feedback. She's no longer handing out her energy like it costs nothing. She's no longer repeating herself to someone who heard her the first time and choose not to change. That silence isn't a pause, feedback, it's a boundary. And when it happens, the shift is seismic. Men often don't know what to do with that kind of silence, especially when they've been met with effort and patience for so long. Feedback, he's used to the pattern. Maybe he pulls away. Maybe he says something thoughtless, maybe disappears for a few days. And you reach out, you fix it, you initiate the hard conversation. Feedback, you bring everything back into balance. But now you're not doing that anymore. Now you're still quiet. And that silence screams a message he can't ignore. The rules have changed. Feedback, it's punishment. It's not manipulation. It's self-respect. It's the moment you stop negotiating with someone about how they should treat you. Because once you stop talking back, once you stop showing up the way you always did, a man realizes that your energy was never owed to him. It was a gift, and gifts don't come with guarantees. Feedback. He starts to feel the loss, not just of you, but of the version of himself he got to be when he was gone your light. That warmth is gone now. And he notices every day, all feedback. And here's what's most powerful about that silencing. It gives you clarity. You stop pouring energy into proving your value. Feedback. You stop trying to make someone see something they were already looking at and choosing not to appreciate. Your silence becomes your reset back. Your moment to step back and realize that love isn't about who you chase. It's about who meets you in the middle. There's this quiet elegance in feminine silence. Feedback, a kind of grace that doesn't need to prove a point to make one. When a woman goes silent, she's not trying to control a man. She's simply choosing herself back, and that choice becomes the mirror he has to look into. He can see the space she once filled and realize how much she was actually doing to hold the relationship together. Feedback. That realization doesn't always come with loud remorse or big gestures. Sometimes it just hits him. In the mornings when he doesn't wake up to her messages. Feedback. In the nights when he reaches for his phone and remembers she's no longer there. The silence isn't just a message to him, it's a message to you. Feedback. It tells you whether he's capable of growth, whether he shows up not just to get you back, but to take responsibility for how he lost you in the first place. Feedback. It tells you if he was ever really ready for the kind of love you were offering. Because the truth is, anyone can want you when you're speaking, showing up, loving loudly. Feedback. But how someone responds when you go quiet, that shows whether they value you or just the benefits of your presence. And the beauty is, you don't need to chase, beg, or explain. Feedback. You don't need to make him understand what he's missing. Your silence will do that. Not because it's cold, because it's clear. Feedback. Because when a woman who knows her worth decides to go silent, it doesn't create distance. It creates truth. And if he's listening, really listening, feedback. Hear everything he needs to in the quiet.